Support ribbons are seen everywhere for different types of cancer, other diseases, and even for our armed forces, police, and firefighters. They were created as a way to show support every day. For example, the support ribbon for the armed forces is yellow. A yellow ribbon of some sort will be found in the house of everyone that is affiliated with the military. It is also popular to tie a yellow ribbon around the tree in your front yard when a family member is deployed. I have seen this on several occasions, and with every ribbon, it is known the amount of support that is being shown. There are too many to remember, but I am familiar with the ones relating to what has affected my family and friends as would anyone else. I was 14 when the Virginia Tech shooting happened, and I didn't hear anything about it until I got further into high school and began seeing it in my textbooks. Being from the West Coast, I didn't know what Virginia Tech was, so I didn't have any knowledge of the event. Now, after studying forensic science for a few semesters, I have learned all about mass crimes that have occurred within the last few decades. Seeing the cover of the Virginia Tech Collegiate Times brought about a number of thoughts and emotions. Doing this assignment is the first time I had seen this portrayal of the support ribbon. I can imagine that those affected didn't want to hear any more about the tragedy they had to experience, and those uninvolved wanted to hear everything. It is hard to compromise when there is such a fine line separating the two parties. It is important that the public is giving accurate information, but the victims also have the right to privacy. Of course, news channels were covering the story from every angle, but they are the ones that are insensitive to the feelings of the victims. News is about who can get the information out first, because that is who will receive better ratings. They are not concerned with how they make the victims feel, as long as they are getting a 5-star rating. The university itself, though, had a different take on how to deliver the news of the event. After learning about the principles of visual rhetoric, I think the university news team approached this tragedy appropriately. Especially because the university is where the tragedy occurred, one would think that they would care more about not upsetting the victims or the rest of the student body that are trying to cope with the losses of friends and classmates, but those that work for the newspaper do so because it's something that they are good at and it's a career that they want to pursue, not because their friends said it would be cool. So they took their job seriously like all news reporters do and delivered the story. The use of the support ribbon is an instant reminder of the overwhelming support that is flowing in from all over the country. It reassures the victims that they are cared for and that the seriousness of the event is seen. It reminds them that the student body is one. They have all come together to mourn and remember the tragedy, but they did it as one, not as individuals. The visual of the support ribbon did exactly what it was supposed to, which is show support. I believe along with the ribbon, the title on the cover provides so much meaning. It emphasizes the support that is out there, but the title also hints towards all the questions that are being asked. The questions that are encompassed in the support ribbon appeal to the audience. It shows the significance of the tragedy because the questions are never ending. Every person wants to know why, and answering every question would take more pages than could be produced. And it would take away from the hurt that the victims are feeling. Yes, it is important to get the bottom of every crime, but when something happens en masse, it's also important to be one with those involved. A single murder is not easy for anyone to deal with, let alone a mass killing. The combination of the support ribbon and the questions show that we support those affected, but we also understand how big of a deal this tragedy is. In Chapter 12 of our textbook, Campbell discusses 3 principles of visual rhetoric, and I want to discuss these visuals and how the image of the support ribbon compares. The first principle starts by saying, visual messages are pervasive. But I do not believe this image is pervasive in any way. The editors took care not to offend or further hurt any of the victims, so I think it is anything but pervasive. But this first principle continues by saying, and threatens to eclipse the influence of the spoken and written word in the 21st century. The fact that the editors showed more care for the victims versus the news, I believe, surpasses any influence of the 21st century, because news today cares about news first and victims last. But what the editors did was the exact opposite of that. The second principle states, Visual messages are volatile, eliciting positive and negative responses simultaneously. I don't believe this principle is easy to avoid because there is so much controversy in our country. There will always be different opinions coming from every direction. Since I didn't know about this event when it happened, or when the Collegiate Times was published, I can only think that there are many positive and negative responses. It's hard to believe that when such a tragedy occurs, people can still have nasty feelings towards others affiliated, but that's the unfortunate truth. Lastly, visual messages are efficient, emotional, and anthematic in the way they persuade. This visual is efficient in displaying the significance of the event in the form of questions, but it was also an emotional image as the support ribbon really captures how the onlookers feel. We may not have experienced the tragedy, and we may have not been anywhere near it, but we support all the lives lost and all who were affected. Overall, the visual touches every emotion and opinion from every angle. After evaluating the cover of the Virginia Tech Collegiate Times in relation to the principles of visual rhetoric, there is not a visible issue regarding the way the support ribbon was used. I believe the design of the cover was well thought out, and that may have to do with the fact that the students of the university designed it. It portrays the appropriate amount of emotion without neglecting the news story it represents. Every online and televised news source relies on videos captured and images released because their viewers prefer to look at pictures of a significant event versus reading a long article. This has a lot to do with the fact that technology has overtaken our society, but many people just don't care to take the time to read the newspaper anymore. Because this was such a tragedy for the university, I think it was a great move in regards to the emotions of those involved to refrain from showing pictures of the event on the cover of the Collegiate Times. It is easy to stick a headline at the top of a picture, but I think the support ribbon portrays a bigger message. Showing pictures is probably the only visual choice that would have had a negative impact for the student journalists. Overall, what they created is the perfect medium.